Well, hello everyone and welcome back to The Man's Kitchen. It's me, your host, James the Food Man, and I got something different for you other than a cooking video coming up next. Alright guys, so today what we're going to do instead of cooking is I went on Reddit and I'm going to answer some questions. I found about 3 of them that I liked on Reddit's Ask Culinary section. And there are 3 questions that I was able to just come up with answers. Didn't require a lot of research on my part, but I'm able to answer these because I have over 15 years of industry experience in restaurants, and more specifically, most of it's in the kitchen. Now, if you like today's video, hit the like button down below and hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to this channel. Ding the bell icon so you get notifications when I post new videos. And again, it's always awesome if you guys want to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Alright, now let's get into the meat of today's video. The first question comes from something I won't even try to pronounce, but I'll pop it up on screen. I believe they were Norwegian. What kind of summer course at a culinary school should I take with no actual culinary experience other than being a passionate home cook? My honest answer is none. Now the reason I say that is because cooking is one of those cool jobs where you can get into it with no formal education. And some schools charge an arm and a leg for a degree in cooking. And you could end up spending the same amount of money being anything else that's probably going to pay better than being your first at least 10 years in the kitchen. So one of the things is when people come into the restaurants, right into the kitchens, and they have only school experience without any practical experience, they are down at the bottom of the pole. When you have somebody come in with 1 or 2 years of work experience and no culinary school experience, they're usually coming in at the middle of the tier right off the bat, because they've been able to show that they show up, they work hard, and they've got good references. Now, this person, the way that the comments for this particular person sounded, it seemed more like they were just looking to further their own knowledge, and that they were just going to do this, take a summer course, and just so they could up their game at home, and that's fine. I wouldn't spend serious money on something like that, though. I would look for something at a local community center that offers cooking classes, maybe one of the big chain grocery stores that does cooking, that brings in local chefs and does cooking classes in a community room. That's the kind of stuff I would look for if you're not interested in a job in the culinary field. If you are interested in a job in the culinary field, then I would suggest that you get a job in the culinary field. You don't need a formal education to get a job. And after 6 months or a year, if you love it, go to school. Because if you're good enough, if you show real talent, odds are you can get an employer to pay for part of it. And depending on where you live in the world, for example, in Canada, where I live, you can do culinary as an apprenticeship, where your workplace will sponsor you, and you can go to school for almost free. That's just an example from my own experience where I live. That's what I did. I worked in a restaurant for about 3 years. I signed up as an apprentice. I got sent off to school basically for free. It was $600 a year is what I paid. That was about 12 years ago. It's gone up a little bit, but not too much since then. And it was a very good experience, and they don't even let you in school without at least a year of practical experience to begin with when you're doing an apprenticeship. So my answer is, if you're doing it to further your personal knowledge, find some community courses, run in some local community centers. If you're doing it for a profession, get a job in a restaurant. If you're in high school and you think you want to do this, go get a part-time job in a restaurant. It doesn't make any sense for you to be working part-time at a car wash when you can be working part-time at a restaurant. Okay, that's the first one. Question 2 comes from Loose Boy. How to make pierogies interesting other than just boiling them? And they did mention that they're using bagged pierogies from their local grocery store. They love these. But basically that's what they're doing. They're taking the bag out of the freezer, they're boiling them, and how do they make them better? Well, the traditional answer is after you boil them and let them dry off, fry up in butter some onions and some bacon. Well, fry up the bacon and then add the onions and butter and brown off the onions and then put your pierogies in there and get everything browned together. That's the classical answer. You're going to drop some sour cream on that, some green onions. But what's a lot more interesting than that? Almost anything else, really, other than just boiling them. What I would suggest is try thinking outside the box. Think about ways that pierogies, which is basically a potato dumpling, think about ways that potatoes are used and go from there. The first thing that came to my mind was actually, we have a seafood stew on our menu, and it's got potatoes in it, shrimp, scallops, crab. So I was thinking, well, you know what would be awesome? Instead of using bacon, use some sausage, throw some shrimp in there. And now you've got almost like a paella or a jambalaya. You're headed in that direction, but you're using pierogies as kind of like the base. And now you've got this nice crispy, because you browned your pierogi after you boiled it, you got this nice crispy shell on your pierogi, and it's crunchy and it tastes delicious because you've developed extra flavor by doing that, and you've got the richness of the sausage. I would recommend a Braising sausage. That's my favorite sausage to cook with. The Italian sausages, they just give me a lot of heartburn, so I always go with the Braising's. So I would just think about other ways that you could use pierogies as a potato substitute, and I would work it from that direction. All right, and the third and final question today comes from Gal2709. Why do you have to braise with low temperatures? And they specified 85 Celsius to 90 Celsius. And for those of you not living in the rest of the world, just those of you living in America, 85 to 95 is 185 to 194 Fahrenheit. So I think it's important that we understand what braising is. We're taking tough cuts of meat and we want to cook them in a manner to make them tender. So I'm going to just give you an example of ossobuco, which is veal shank, and you have basically the leg, and then you cut it this way. So you have the bone running through the center. And that's a very classical dish to braise. So what you would do with that is you would brown it in a frying pan because you need to develop that flavor. And this is also something I see with a lot of people with slow cookers, is they just throw everything in. You still need to brown your meat to develop a flavor on the outside. So you've got your ossobuco, your veal shank, and you've browned it. And now you put it in your pot. And you bring the pot, you half submerge your item. So if it's like this thick, you bring the water up to here, right? And your water, liquid, whatever you use, stock. I would use a beef stock with or a white stock. I would use a white stock. Maybe a veal stock would be nice. Well, yeah, a veal stock would be nice because it's a veal dish. But you would put your stock in there and maybe some tomato paste, give it some added acid. That'll help with the breakdown over the long term. Or some wine. That'll do the same trick too, or both. And you bring it to a full boil because it needs to get that initial heat. Then you wrap it up nice and tight and put it in the oven at that lower temperature for a few hours. And what's going to happen in the first hour or so, your meat should be well done. And it's going to be tough. But what happens is as the moisture gets in there and the steam gets in there, it's really going to break down the collagen. It's going to develop a lot more rich flavor in the stock too. You're going to have a lot of the fat's going to render, the collagen's going to break down, and it's all going to get into the stock. And if you just tried this with just water and not stock, you're going to have a broth by the end of it. And if you take that broth out and reduce it, you will get some jelly eventually. But if you start with a stock, you're going to have a good head start. So what would happen if you did this at a full roast, if you did this at like say 350 or 400 or 500, is that you're going to get too much, your liquid will start to boil in there, and it will start to dry out, and the steam won't be able, at that kind of temperature, even with it wrapped, you're still going to get lost. It's still going to get out, seep out there, and you're going to work it too fast, and you're going to stop the collagen really from breaking down, because when you get too hot, too high of a heat, the process just doesn't work. Now, in the reading the other comments listed on this, one of the questions really that the user was asking too was, why can't I boil? And the thing, when you boil, if you just put, say, the veal on a pot and bring it to a full boil, it'll get like elasticy, basically. It'll snap. The proteins don't get the time to relax, and they will snap back, and it just gets really tough. And I mean, you can just boil it for hours at a full boil. Eventually, it might get tender, but it's not going to taste right. It's going to taste like, that's why boiled meat tastes horrible. But they're also comparing their question to pressure cookers. Well, how come you can pressure cook? And when you cook under pressure, I don't have a ton of experience cooking with pressure cookers, but when you cook under pressure, what happens is that you're actually changing the boiling point of water, and you're allowing the water to get to a higher temperature, lower temperature? Higher pressure. Yeah, you're letting it actually get to a higher pressure, higher temperature before it boils. And you're getting that heat without the agitation of the water. And that's kind of the trickery behind pressure cooking. And it brings your cook time down. But I would really consider, if you really want to truly understand braising, I would get an old cook. Go find your grandma's cookbooks, and I would look up 1 or 2 braising recipes from there and give them a try, because you're really going to get a feel for the technique that way. It's really nothing that you can rush. All right, well, those were my answers for those 3 questions. Feel free to agree or disagree with me. Leave some comments down in the comments section below, and see if we can spark a discussion about these topics. Until next week, stay hungry, my friends.